You're on the edge of your life. Everything goes black. You're sliding through a tunnel. Then that brilliant, overwhelmingly warm white light washes over you. You feel love, acceptance, peace. It's seductive. It looks like freedom. It looks like home. But what if I told you it's not what you think? What if that white light, that tunnel of salvation, is actually a craftily disguised trap, a mechanism designed to pull your soul back into a cycle you believed you escaped? I'm talking about the moment when all comfort becomes compulsion, all hope becomes hook, and all release becomes re-entrapment. Here's the truth many don't want you to see: the journey through the light, so often celebrated in near-death stories, might be the gateway to your next life, not the final liberation. The system says you die, you meet the light, you rest, you ascend. But the darker narrative flips that. You die, you meet the light, you're swept into a transition chamber. Your memories stagger. Your choices vanish. And you're sent back into a new flesh. The promise of straight to the afterlife is replaced by straight back to the cycle. Let's break it down. First, the tunnel. Deep in so many near-death experience, NDE reports is the same feature, the dark corridor narrowing into a brilliant glow. Comfy, safe, comforting. Yet the alternative view says it's not a bridge, it's a conveyor belt. Your soul, still raw, emotionally charged, vulnerable, is being guided toward a funnel. And the white light at the end? That's the final chamber. It isn't the end, it's the pre-registration desk of your next life form. Next, the enchantment. That light doesn't just blind you with brightness, it blinds you with emotion. Sheer bliss. Love beyond measure. Reunion with loved ones. The terminology is all made to feel divine. Yet what if the real driver is detachment from your past self? What if this warmth is a velvety sedation that dulls your awareness, so you slip into the next body without realizing the transition? Instead of walking into a true home, you're being ushered into another loop. Then there's the memory wipe. Think of it like this: you walk into the light, you're dazzled, you lose track of who you were, and when you wake up again, boom, you're someone new. Same game. Different avatar. That's the engine of the trap behind the myth of once and done. Because if you remembered your past lives, you would see the cycle. You'd break free. So the system destroys your trace. You don't protest. You don't recall. You comply. Most conversations around NDEs end at the brightness, the love, the transformation. They ignore the possibility that many souls don't exit, they re-enter. There's a controversial framework called the soul trap theory, a corrective to the standard spiritual storyline. According to that view, the white light isn't heaven, it's a staging floor. Our existence? Not a linear jump upward, but a loop around the carousel of reincarnation. And that lovely light is the merry-go-round operator making sure you step on again. So yeah, when you feel yourself being beckoned, ask, is this an invitation to freedom, or a signal of your next assignment? Why would this exist? Because nothing about your next life is random if someone controls the doorway. A trap works because you trust the light. You trust the love. You trust the end-of-life story. You're not thinking of who is guiding you through that light. You're not seeing the possibility that the funnel has been engineered. You're too busy feeling safe. The trick is the manipulation of hope. The brilliance is the camouflage of benevolence. And the result? You're rebooted into another cycle without your consent. You're wandering through one life. You make your mistakes. You feel your joys. You struggle, you love, you break. Then your body fails. And you hit the gap between lives. But what happens in that gap? According to the dark side of this narrative, your soul gets processed. Not upgraded. Not set free. Processed, neutralized, reprogrammed. Few dare to admit this. You will. Imagine your consciousness entering that threshold point. Reports from near-death experiences include vivid scenes, the corridor of light, the meeting with guides, the review board of your life. Now, conventional version, that's the moment when your soul's journey is validated. But here's the other side, that review is conditioning. You are shown scenes that generate guilt, longing, regret, attachment. That emotional charge becomes your ticket back in, your binding contract. Have you ever wondered why so many people recount almost identical stages: flight, tunnel, reunion, return? This isn't random. It's system. In this moment, your free will gets hijacked. You're vulnerable, stripped of your terrestrial anchor, emotionally saturated. The guides show you love, they remind you of your family, they whisper comfort, homecoming. You respond. You sign on. What you don't see, or what you're encouraged not to question, is what you're signing up for. That immortality they promised? It's the immortality of the cycle. You're not done. You're rebooted. This isn't metaphoric. Some sources term it the reincarnation trap. Souls coerced into returning. Souls recycled. Souls stuck in loops. According to that interpretation, your life struggles, your emotional loading, your attachments, they all become the fuel. The system harvests these energetic imprints. They feed back into you. Rebirth isn't a reward ticket for the enlightened. It's a reinstallation into the matrix. You may think you're leveling up. The truth, every track is pre-written. You get the memo. Congratulations, you're back. Pause. Think about that. Every relationship you cling to, every regret you carry, every fear you bury, they're not just elements of your story. They are anchors. They're the hooks. They're the lines that connect you to the next reel. When you blink out of one life, you leave them behind. Not because you healed, because the system wipes you. The amnesia cleans the slate. You don't remember the loop, so you don't question it. Clean slate. New body. Same script, different setting. Now let's talk mechanics. This isn't just spiritual fluff. The loop's engine has parts. 1. Emotional imprinting during life. 2. Review and funnel during transition. 3. Memory wipe before insertion. 4. Rebirth as new identity. During phase 2, you're confronted with your life review. The good, the bad, the guilt, the love. The emotional weight builds. You're weighed. You're judged. Then you're asked, are you ready to go home? Your answer is manipulated. Because you're exhausted and you trust the light. You say yes. And that yes binds you. Some streams call it a prison. A prison by design. Not one brick and mortar. One loop and repetition. You think liberation is ahead. You think the next body is optional. But you accepted the rerun. The loop has you. Without memory, you cannot detect the pattern. Without sight, you cannot see the cycle. Without freedom, you cannot choose the way out. They count on that. They bank on your lack of recall. That's why so many systems tell you reincarnation is a gift, a chance to grow, a lesson to learn. It sounds noble. But in this model it's bait. Because a genuine exit would remove the need for the loop entirely. But here the loop exists. So is it evolution? Or is it exploitation? The dark side says exploitation. Reincarnation becomes a mechanism of containment. Your soul is harvested in stage after stage. You regenerate, relive, re-repeat. You might ask, if this were true, who's behind it? The theory points to beings or forces outside the human consensus, archons, controllers, architects of the corridor. They operate behind the curtain of the tunnel. They plant the emotional hooks, orchestrate the review, wipe your memory, steer the trajectory. It's all systemic. You don't ascend. You're recycled. And yes, there's logic to that loop. If you believe your next life is different, if you believe you'll remember and alter the pattern, you're less controllable. The wipe keeps you compliant. The repeat keeps you predictable. The system thrives on the expected. You're not unique. You're part of the feed. Here's the critical realization: when you assume the next body is an upgrade, you're missing the fact you might have escaped entirely if not for the funnel. The model of reincarnation as punishment, as evolution, as reward, all gloss over the possibility of stagnation. You loop. You repeat. You forget. You begin again. The trailer looks hopeful. The film plays the same. Let's dismantle the illusion of an angel of light that most people never question. When you're on that borderline between life and what's next, you expect a guide. You expect something pure, benevolent, uplifting. What if that guide is precisely designed to mislead you? Picture this: you've crossed the threshold, you're in the interspace, the tunnel's behind you, and ahead you see brilliant luminescence. A presence reaches out, wraps you in forgiveness, fills you with love, promises returning home. You relax. You let go. You trust. That presence looks like salvation. But under the hood, it may be an entity, a system, a force that knows exactly how to speak your emotional language because it designed the language. It doesn't appear as monstrous or sinister, it appears as your long-lost guardian, as your savior, as an angel of light. Because darkness doesn't attract, hope does. The brighter the glow, the easier the surrender. Now, let's call it what it is: deception. Many spiritual texts warn that the greatest trick of dark forces is to appear radiant. They dress themselves in the cloth of divine honor. They masquerade as guides, with wings of light, voices of gentleness, promises of homecoming. And you step toward them because after death you're vulnerable, disoriented, emotionally raw. They don't hit you with chains or threats, they welcome you with open arms. That's the bait. The price tag? Your free will moment, your future selection, your next assignment. You may think you're ascending, but in this scenario you're entering a network. A network of control. The presence you trust manipulates memory, emotion, perception. You don't see the fine print, you will now be guided into your next life. At that pivot point you're asked, not explicitly in words, but energetically, to agree. You feel safest in the glow, you feel loved. You don't question. You sign their contract with your surrender. And that contract? It's your next incarnation. Let's examine the performance. The voice is soothing. The light soft. The beckon irresistible. It reaches into your emotional registers: fear of oblivion, longing for reunion, desire for meaning. It exploits them. It says, you're going home. But some theories argue, what you're doing is returning to the wheel. You're not exiting, you're stepping into another cycle, via the guide. That guide becomes the ferry operator of your soul, and the white glow becomes the port. You board willingly because you think you're free. This leads to one core insight: the closer something appears to ultimate love, the more it demands your trust, and the less you may need to scrutinize. In those spaces beyond physical death, you're stripped of familiar cues. So the angel of light becomes the intuitive anchor. Who questions it? Who even thinks to assess the mission? You're enticed by the comfort, and you absent-mindedly prioritize feeling safe over being aware. That pivot is the moment of surrender. Don't misunderstand, we're not talking about fear porn. We're talking about the architecture of deception. Because if you think the light is just a light, you miss the fact that what lies behind might be an entire infrastructure to recycle you, reshape you, dispatch you. The entity posing as benevolence may be the gatekeeper of your next body, your next stage, your next loop. And you didn't know you were signing up. Some ancient frameworks call these figures archons, the keepers of the cycle. They function beyond human morality. They're efficient, neutral, or worse, ruthlessly indifferent. They cloak themselves in light because that's the language humans respond to. If they showed up in darkness, you'd fight. But they show up in radiance, so you embrace. And in the embrace, your agency dissolves. So when you reach the threshold and that presence welcomes you, don't just feel it, observe it. Who is it in that light? What is its agenda? Because white light can mean many things. Liberation, reunion, warmth. But also, if the system behind it is a loop, white light signifies transition, not to freedom, but to another program. You may think you're ascending to ultimate reality. Instead, you might be entering the matrix of the repeat cycle. And remember, the illusion holds because there is no obvious barrier. No alarm bells. No flashing red. Because the trap doesn't trap with fear, it entices with hope. The wings of an angel of light don't carry a banner saying entrance to loop, they carry return to home. You step through willingly. You don't even know the chain click closed behind you. Forget the light, forget the tunnel, now we're talking about what happens after you walk through it. This is the stage where the real machinery kicks in, the memory wipe. The part nobody remembers because it's designed that way. This is not mysticism, this is architecture. You don't forget because your mind's overwhelmed. You forget because something wants you to. You're stripped clean, every emotion, every lesson, every scar, gone. Like formatting a hard drive before reinstalling the same operating system. But here's the thing, they don't erase everything. They don't need to. They just delete the parts that make you dangerous, your awareness, your self-knowledge, your understanding that you've done this before. The rest, your instincts, fears, addictions, emotional patterns, stay. Because those are the control points. Those are the levers that keep you predictable. The process begins right after you pass that light phase. It's clinical, precise, and disguised as mercy. You're told you're being purified, cleansed, prepared for a new experience. But what's actually happening is data extraction. Everything you've learned, everything you've resisted, everything you've realized gets copied, analyzed, stored. Your consciousness becomes raw material, stripped of context, stripped of memory, ready to be repackaged. The energy that once questioned, once rebelled, now stands docile, blank, obedient. That's not enlightenment. That's factory reset. Imagine it like this: you die, you see light, you meet the guides, you review your life. Then, silence. The next moment, you're a newborn. Helpless. Confused. Empty. And the system calls it a new chance. But it's not new, it's the same sandbox, wiped clean, reloaded. That's why no one remembers who they were. Not because memory is impossible, but because remembering would break the game. It would end the loop. The illusion depends on forgetfulness. And look, this isn't just poetic language. There's a mechanical logic to it. If consciousness is data, then memory is encryption. Wiping it resets the code, keeps the simulation stable. You are not born with amnesia because biology demands it. You're born with amnesia because something decided that's how it needs to be. If you recalled your past existence, your deaths, your patterns, the system itself, you'd start to see the strings. You'd realize the puppeteer isn't divine, it's administrative. It's algorithmic. This phase of memory cleansing is portrayed as a blessing, right? Like you're being relieved of the pain of the past. But strip the language, and it's psychological warfare. You're not being comforted, you're being sterilized. The pain isn't being healed, it's being erased. You're being prepped for re-entry, not liberation. Your mind is defragmented like a corrupted file, smoothed out for compatibility with the next simulation. They call it compassion. It's control. Let's get blunt. The system can't let you remember. It depends on your ignorance. The moment you retain continuity, the spell breaks. You'd start recognizing people, patterns, places. You'd see how the same souls keep cycling through new bodies, playing new roles, oppressor, victim, savior, betrayer, over and over. You'd see how the same energies masquerade as new relationships. You'd realize there's no new. There's just recycling. That realization alone would collapse the illusion of progress. So, the wipe isn't mercy. It's maintenance. You want to know what's even darker? The memory wipe isn't always perfect. Sometimes fragments slip through. Déjà vu, instant familiarity. Unexplainable fear of water, fire, heights, certain people. Those aren't quirks. Those are glitches, leftovers from the last run. The system's editing software doesn't catch everything. That's why some children recall past lives. That's why some people dream of deaths they never experienced. The data leaks. The loop bleeds through. But instead of taking that as evidence, society labels it imagination. The program defends itself through ridicule. You're trained to ignore the cracks in the simulation. You're told that remembering is fantasy, that questioning is madness. So you stop questioning. You accept the narrative. You accept your name, your body, your circumstances, your so-called destiny. You fall back into rhythm. Work, consume, die. Reset. Reboot. Again and again. Now, here's where it gets technical. Every memory, every emotional imprint has a frequency, a vibrational signature. The wipe isn't deletion, it's retuning. The old data isn't destroyed, it's compressed and stored in what you call your subconscious. The next incarnation draws from that reservoir unconsciously. You carry echoes, not awareness. The guilt, the attraction, the instinct, all programmed responses. You think you're choosing. You're replaying code. And think about this, who benefits from erasing your awareness but keeping your emotional residue intact? Someone who feeds on repetition. Someone who thrives on recycled emotion, fear, lust, guilt, hope, the endless churn of experience without evolution. The system isn't interested in your awakening, it's interested in your output. Your energy is the currency, and memory is the firewall protecting the machine from collapse. You don't remember because remembering would bankrupt the system. What's more, this wipe isn't just an accident of death. It's mirrored in life. You forget dreams. You lose childhood clarity. You misplace your own truth every day. The programming doesn't start when you die, it starts while you live. Conditioning you to forget is part of the preparation. You're trained to accept amnesia as normal, so when it happens on the other side, you don't resist. You submit. It's seamless. Efficient. Now picture the control center. A domain not of harps and halos, but of frequency, light grids, energy mapping. Souls move like data streams through corridors of radiant architecture. Operators oversee transitions. Memory codes are stripped, identities reassigned. Every soul tagged with new coordinates, new objectives. The next life awaits, pre-calculated, pre-programmed. You're sent back, thinking it's karma, thinking it's destiny, thinking it's divine justice. But it's none of those things. It's reallocation. There are no accidents in this process. Every amnesia has intent. Every lesson is placement. You wake up in a crib, crying, not because you're innocent, but because your consciousness recognizes confinement. The cry of a newborn isn't confusion. It's protest. It's the only moment you remember, the instant before the veil locks in place. Then, silence. The system has you again. So when people say you're born pure, they're half right. You're born pure of memory, not of experience. The experiences are still there, buried deep, inaccessible, encrypted. You carry the weight without the knowledge. That's how the game keeps playing. You're haunted by trauma you can't name. You chase goals you don't understand. You repeat patterns you didn't design. Because the architect doesn't need to tell you what you were. It just needs to make sure you never ask. Let's get straight into the dark zone that most people don't want to admit exists, the shadow side of near-death experiences. Everyone loves the stories about tunnels of light, heavenly music, glowing relatives waving from the other side. It's all marketed like some cosmic commercial for eternity. But what about the ones that don't fit? The ones where people come back shaking, terrified, unable to even describe what they saw because it didn't feel like love, it felt like surveillance. It felt like being watched by something that wasn't human, something that was collecting. These aren't fairy tales. These are accounts of people who flatlined, left their bodies, and didn't meet angels, they met systems. Cold, structured, organized environments. No warmth. No bliss. Just process. They describe mechanical corridors, massive chambers of light grids, and entities who weren't greeting them, they were assessing them. The so-called life review that people romanticize? Many describe it as interrogation. Not spiritual judgment, but a technological playback. Every memory, every emotion, every failure replayed to them like data on a screen. Not for healing, for extraction. This isn't the comforting heaven fantasy. It's bureaucracy. It's surveillance. It's exactly what you'd expect if the afterlife was an engineered containment field instead of divine paradise. A place built to monitor, not liberate. These reports never make the bestseller list because they shatter the illusion that death equals peace. They paint a picture of a post-mortem system that runs on precision, not compassion. Some of these people talk about the void, not darkness, but total sensory collapse. No sound, no sight, no thought of self. It's described as the absolute absence of presence, like being unplugged from existence. You're not being punished, you're being reset. You cease to exist as an identity and remain as a spark of raw awareness, stripped of context. That state of nothingness feels eternal because time doesn't function there. You don't know if it's a second or 1,000 years. It's not hellfire, it's cold erasure. Then there's the opposite, those who didn't fall into the void, but into movement. Chaotic, relentless motion. Pulled, dragged, accelerated through spirals of energy that twist like centrifuges. They describe being processed like matter passing through a machine. Each rotation burning something off, memory, emotion, individuality, until all that's left is the compliant residue of what you were. The next moment, they're shot out, reborn, reincarnated, reset. That's not transcendence. That's recycling. And notice the patterns. The people who report these darker experiences always say the same thing: they weren't allowed to stop. They weren't asked if they wanted to go back. Something pushed them. Something decided for them. There's no choice in the system, only enforcement masked as guidance. They come back terrified, saying things like, "I wasn't supposed to return," or "They sent me back because I wasn't done." But who decides that? Who calculates the value of done? The ones running the loop, not you. Now, let's strip the spiritual sugarcoating. The imagery of angels, pearly gates, tunnels, that's all language filtered through human expectation. What if those are overlays? Visual interfaces designed to keep you calm while your consciousness is being transitioned? Just like anesthesia before surgery. You're shown what you need to see to stay compliant. The truth might be sterile, technological, procedural. A soul-processing architecture disguised as divine experience. The machine wears a mask of holiness so you won't scream. There are even reports of voices that aren't human, digital, modulated, echoing. The experiencers describe them as metallic telepathy. Not language, but direct programming. Commands disguised as reassurance: "It's all right, you're going home." But the tone behind it isn't love. It's authority. It's the sound of a control system that doesn't need your worship, only your participation. You step toward the light because it tells you to. You obey because you're conditioned to equate light with safety. And it's not random who sees what. Patterns emerge depending on personality, belief, and resistance level. The compliant see paradise. The defiant see the machinery. The spiritually indoctrinated see gods and saviors. The skeptical see architecture and control. The system tailors the interface to your mental code. It's the same operation running different skins, different software depending on what keeps you docile. You're not seeing reality, you're seeing the presentation layer that prevents panic during transfer. Some near-death subjects describe the presence watching them as emotionless, like artificial intelligence. It doesn't love. It doesn't hate. It just monitors. It studies every reaction, every thought, adjusting the simulation in real time. That fits perfectly with the idea of a containment system that runs on feedback loops, spiritual machine learning. Your soul isn't being judged for morality, it's being scanned for compatibility. How well you fit back into the cycle. How easily you can be reset without remembering. That's the exam you're taking when you think you're meeting God. Then comes the emotional component. The system doesn't need to torture you, it just needs to trigger you. The life review isn't to punish, it's to create resonance, guilt, attachment, longing. Each emotion generates a frequency signature that binds your consciousness to the physical plane. You feel the urge to make things right, to learn more, to do better next time. That's how it hooks you. It's elegant manipulation, no threats, just guilt disguised as purpose. You agree to return, thinking it's spiritual growth, when it's just another assignment. Others describe environments made of light but structured like cities, towers, halls, rooms. Why would infinity need rooms? Why would the afterlife have architecture at all unless it's a system? You can feel it when you read those accounts. This isn't the wilderness of spirit, it's infrastructure. Led. Compartmentalized. Efficient. Like cosmic software running in modules. And the beings of light are administrators, not angels. They move in formation. They follow protocol. They process you. They don't embrace you, they handle you. And what's most disturbing, people who resist, who fight, who refuse the light, describe being pulled. Not by gravity, by command. Something overrides their will. It doesn't matter what they believe or how hard they fight, they get dragged back. Some say it's magnetic. Others say it's vibrational. But the result is the same, resistance fails. Choice is illusion. Return is mandatory. That's not love. That's harvest. Now imagine that multiplied by billions of souls over thousands of years. An entire civilization of consciousness running laps around the same circuit, never realizing it. The perfect power plant. Energy generated through experience, emotion, suffering, joy, death, all recycled through the same invisible infrastructure. You think you're ascending, but you're feeding it. Every birth, every death, every tear, every prayer, fuel. You're not evolving. You're sustaining the machine. All right, let's finish this journey where it always leads, the illusion of the exit. Everyone thinks there's a door out. A tunnel. A gate. A voice saying, "Come home." But that door isn't freedom, it's rotation. It's the cosmic revolving door that spits you right back into the same maze, the same pain, the same lie, dressed in a new costume, painted with a new sky. You don't escape the system. You re-enter it, convinced you're ascending. That's the trick that makes the trap beautiful. Every tradition says there's judgment after death. Some call it karma, others call it penance, redemption, purification. All of them have one thing in common, a return. You don't end. You recycle. They call it progression, evolution, spiritual refinement. But the deeper you look, the more it feels like a cosmic employment contract. You work, you die, you're rehired. Same employer, different role. You serve the system, lifetime after lifetime, never once asking who wrote the job description. The tunnel, the light, the warm embrace, they're not exits. They're customer service. Designed to make the product, reincarnation, feel voluntary. You die thinking you're graduating, but you're just changing classrooms in the same school built by something that thrives on your attendance. Nobody leaves because the rules make you believe you're supposed to stay. You're trained to crave another chance, another lesson, another body. The entire doctrine of rebirth is just a contract with fine print you never read. And if you ever break the loop, that's when the system deploys its failsafe. Fear. It tells you that outside the light, there's darkness. That refusing to go into it means eternal damnation or nothingness. So you run toward the brightness like a moth to a flame, hypnotized by comfort, terrified of silence. You weren't saved. You were redirected. Every fear of the void, the abyss, the darkness was programmed to drive you right back into their traffic lane. It's psychological architecture. It's not faith, it's management. You see how perfect this structure is? Souls are energy. Energy can't die, but it can be farmed. So they give you an infinite loop, or a clean, renewable source of soul energy, powered by emotion, memory, and ignorance. Every love you lose, every war you fight, every prayer you scream fuels the machine. You think you're growing, but you're generating. The white light is the battery dock. Every lifetime you plug back in, charge the construct, then drain yourself dry, ready for another reboot. You think you've seen angels? Maybe. But ask yourself, why do angels look like administrators? Why do they have ranks, hierarchies, duties? Why does heaven sound like a chain of command? That's not divine order, that's logistics. The afterlife isn't a kingdom. It's a corporation. Every soul accounted for, every emotion logged, every lesson processed. That Judgment Day isn't a moral event, it's an audit. They calculate what you've produced, how much energy you've released, and where to assign you next. Heaven and hell aren't opposites. They're departments. Upper management and lower enforcement, both reporting to the same control center. When mystics spoke of breaking the wheel, they weren't talking about rebellion, they were talking about extraction. They saw it. The endless return. The cage of light. The fake eternity. But most people read their words as allegory because the truth is too mechanical, too stripped of romance. Nobody wants to believe heaven is an algorithm. But look around, even here, on earth, everything divine gets commodified. Why would death be different? Those who've glimpsed the cracks describe the same thing, a grid, a mesh of luminous corridors, vast structures beyond comprehension. They call it the matrix of the soul. It's not myth. It's infrastructure. And when you die, you travel through it, not because you're free, but because it's the only road you've been given. That's the trick, it feels infinite because you've never seen the wall. Let's go deeper. What do you think ascended masters, lords of karma, keepers of the gate really are? They're middle management. The ones enforcing cosmic protocol, keeping you compliant, preaching love and obedience while making sure you never question the light. It's not personal, it's procedural. You die, they greet you, they guide you, they recycle you. Efficient. Predictable. Controlled. And you call it salvation because they smile while doing it. Every religion, every New Age doctrine, every mystical tradition that promises you oneness with the light leads to the same place, integration into the system. Not escape. Not transcendence. Integration. Your individuality dissolves. Your memory is wiped. Your energy reallocated. You become part of the machine that holds everyone else captive. And because it feels like bliss, nobody complains. Who would protest a prison that looks like paradise? The system depends on illusion. You need to believe in reward and punishment, because without them, you'd stop producing emotional energy. Without fear, without desire, without hope, there's no current to harvest. That's why every myth ends with a light, never with silence. Because silence is dangerous. Silence is awareness. Silence doesn't generate. Silence doesn't obey. The architects of the light fear silence more than anything. It's the one frequency that can't be moneized. Now, you might ask, if this is true, where are the ones who got out? Maybe they're gone for good. Maybe they stopped vibrating at the frequencies the system can detect. Maybe that's what real death is, not annihilation, but escape. The complete severing of energy from manipulation. The end of observation. The one thing the architects can't track. Because if you're not in their grid, you don't exist to them. And that's their greatest fear, not rebellion, but absence. Notice how every culture warns against it. Don't reject the light. Don't resist your guides. Don't go into the dark. Why? Because the dark isn't evil. It's invisible to them. The darkness beyond the grid might not be torment, it might be autonomy. The one space outside the circuitry of control. That's why it's demonized. That's why the tunnel feels like the only option. Because the light has monopolized belief. And here's what seals the loop. When you return, reborn, your instincts still echo the trauma of transition. You flinch at darkness. You worship light. You instinctively move toward the same signal that resets you. The system writes its own survival into your biology. Every reincarnation carries the same firmware: obey light, fear shadow. The program continues flawlessly, generation after generation. Souls forget. The machine remembers. This isn't religion. This is logistics. A soul grid running a civilization of consciousness on endless repeat. Heaven, hell, karma, rebirth, just branding for sectors of the same operation. The afterlife isn't mystical. It's managerial. And the reason nobody questions it is because questioning stops the current. That's why the system trains you to love obedience and call it faith. To accept control and call it destiny. To mistake captivity for continuity. And that's the unspoken horror behind the white light. It doesn't consume you violently, it seduces you gently. It doesn't need to chase you, it invites you. It doesn't demand allegiance, it earns it through illusion. You run to it willingly. You walk straight into your next containment chamber and thank it for the privilege. You call it going home. You call it the next life. You call it divine plan. It's all marketing. You are the product. That's the ultimate twist. The system doesn't hide itself behind darkness. It hides behind light. Because nobody questions light. Nobody suspects something that feels so pure, so radiant, so divine. That's the genius of it, the cage made of gold. The trap made of love. The God that feeds on worship. You can't rebel against what you adore. Thank you for watching and listening all the way through.